Hello guys. Since I completed the Q part for Redis yesterday, today I'll be working on job store, converting the in-memory job store to our Redis-based job store. But a quick disclaimer: this stream won't be long because I have my mid-sem exams starting tomorrow. So for this week, the stream will be shorter and I might not be able to complete whole store in one go. So stick to find out how much I complete. Starting with the store, what we need first is define some boundaries because store is a is going to be massive depending on the in-memory part and all that. So I'll just have some boundaries like definitions. Definition and initialization. This part will work with struct definition and initialization. Something like this. I'll make the code more readable by splitting the parts. This will be a general helper function and it will be used both in Redis and in our in-memory implementation. So general helper functions if any other function occurs like that, and I'll have something like this. Okay, now the thing is, this was our in-memory store, but in Redis we don't need a mutex and a jobs map. Everything will be handled by Redis hash. So first let me tell you what hash is in Redis. So hash in Redis means uh, a value, a key defined by some value having multiple fields. Like I can have multiple fields inside it, one field, two field. Like JSON in JavaScript, if JSON in most of the time, JSON but string based JSON defined by key value pairs. We can store multiple key value pairs inside one key value pair. So it's like nested JSON, if you may tell anyone about it. So it's like nested JSON. The hash will have its own key and the value will be fields. The fields correspond to like, let me just do this. The fields correspond to this or this, which are in itself multiple key value pairs. So I think it's easier to understand than a sorted set. So let's get started with it. So what I'll need is to define a Redis store. The Redis store will be a struct and it will only take a client, which will be a Redis dot universal client, which we discussed yesterday. And in the initialization, what we'll do is one new Redis store. It will take a client string, which will be Redis dot universal client type, and it will give us a pointer to a Redis store. Yes, that was like charm. So we can initialize a new Redis store like this, and then what I'll do is return a new Redis store with client as client. instead of writing client or client, what is this? Redis-backed universal client or field client, universal client. I think this will work fine, but to be safe, I'll Redis client. To be safe, I'll use this. I don't know naming convention much in how it works in Go, so why take risks? So that's how our definition for the Redis client will be done. It is nothing much. We are just initializing a new Redis client. That's all. And one more thing, we need to check for the if Redis client is nil, and it should give us an error, and it should be like this, and it should give us error from nil. Since it's one liner, I can just make it like this. This is better. So for error, let me create if Redis client, if the user, if the caller of the function gives us an empty string. If Redis client is an empty string, it will not be a string, but it will be equal to nil. If Redis client is nil, then what we'll do is return nil, comma, error. An error. So let's define errors like we did yesterday. We'll use var and error Redis client. What should the name is? Nil. Redis client nil. Last time we used this errors dot new. So it will be errors dot new. Yep, so it will be Redis client. To have consistency, let me get the error detail from yesterday. What we named it? Redis client is nil. Yes, is nil. Okay, so it will return us error Redis client nil. And I think I'm done with the initialization for the Redis store, and the struct has also been defined. Error definitions, should I know? Let's trivial define error definition. Okay, now coming to our older code. So what it was doing is, this is validate context. It should work like validate first. Let me check validate context. It's blocking undone and then conductor error. Yeah, it's done. Next, we need to check our old in memory. Let me just separate this part. In memory store implementation. You might be wondering why I'm not using a different file like we used in Q, because the job part will be simpler. It will be just CRUD operation. Like we will need to save the job, get the job, update it and delete it. While on the Q, there might be other functionalities later based on Redis or in memory. So that's why I differentiated the concerns. But here it will have 4 defined routes. That's all we care about. So there may be very little changes. So no need to create new files like that. Now coming to our save function. What it does is context and a job. It never checks a job if it's nil, like we did in a queue. Let's just make sure job equals to nil. Then we will do is we'll return an error which will be error job nil. Errors dot new. Let me get the text from here. There's a queue manager. Here will be the error for defined for that. No. So how I handle queue is nil. So I'll just go job is nil. Something like that. If job is nil, we'll return an error. It will be error job nil. Something like that. And then we will check job ID because the store depends on job ID. If job ID is empty, we'll return an error. Job.id equals to empty string, we'll return an error which we have to define. Error job ID empty. Error empty job ID. That looks good. Errors dot new, again we'll generate an error. Job ID is empty. Is empty. Something like that. And we'll return error empty job ID here. After that, we will do is, instead of locking the process here, we can just lock the process here, because validation of context does not concern with the lock. Also, job check does not concern with the lock. Job.id check does not concern with the lock. Only thing that concern with the lock is writing the job. So that's why I shifted the lock here instead of up there. Now coming to the get, again we need to add some errors so that we can just work solely. And also here we will do is to click this and then space, add some space like this, and this is well same reason I did above. Okay, now the thing is we'll check for it is passing an ID, so we'll check if the ID is empty. If ID equals to empty, what we can return is job ID is empty or a job not found, which is already defined here. So I'll cut it to X and create a new variable for it. Error job not found equals to told me the error I just wrote, and I'll return error job not found, and here if ID is nil, return nil, comma, an error job ID is empty, error empty job ID. That's better than error job not found. And that's all we need in get functionality. Next, I have to move this to our helper functions. So let me move this. It's not a general helper function. I think it's a general helper function. It will check for a valid transaction. If it's from this to this, then it's valid. If not, this to this. But in update part, I'll use Lua, so it's only valid for our in-memory. In-memory helper is better than general. In-memory helper functions. I'll just copy this down and paste it. And instead of general, it will be in-memory, and it will increase the size by bits. And that's alright. In-memory helper functions is more helper function arrive, we will just include them here. So separation of code content is there. Next, we move on to update status. Again, validation does not require a lock. So I'll move this down. And next thing we need to check here is the same thing we checked in get, which is this. I will copy this and paste this. We'll check for empty job ID, or in this case we can just, yeah, this works fine. Next we will check for job exist. If job does not exist, we will return the error job not found, and this is invalid transaction from this to this. This is fine, and updation is fine, so everything looks good to me. Next, for the delete functionality, again we need to move this down. X. Why lock when we don't need a lock? That's the philosophy. And regarding ID, I'll paste that part here. With this, and this is working fine. Okay. Now we move on to the main agenda of this stream. That will be our work with Redis. How do I write it here? In memory helper function, in memory store implementation. So I'll just copy it, and from here on I'll start Redis based Redis-based core implementation. This is not a very big task, to be honest, because hashes are easier than sorted sets in a very good way. So let me start by implementing the save function, just like we did here, but I'll just copy the function signature, and instead here store will be Redis store. Yep. Do we need anything else? I don't think so. Nice. Now, like every time we will check for valid context, like we did here. If the context is valid, then only we will proceed. Now, next thing we need to do is convert the job, which is multiple fields like this, into a hash which can be stored on Redis. So hash is nothing but a JSON key value pair, just a key value pair, as you can see in JSON. So what I'll do is I'll write a helper function for Redis. So not to confuse with helper functions here, I'll write the helper function down with the Redis implementation. In memory, Redis-based helper functions. Redis-based helper functions. So what I'll do first is I'll write a helper function that will take a job and convert it into a hash. I mean, a hash is multiple fields, so it will convert it into a map of string and string and string. Let me think about this. Since Redis needs a string and a I think job to Redis. It can be string to anything. Yeah, it can be string to anything. We'll return a map of string to anything. So let's start with the implementation. So I'll create a function that will be job to Redis hash. So what I'll do is it will take a job, J is a type of job, and what it will give us is a map of string as a key and any as value and error if any error occurs. Error might occur because we are going to use JSON.Marshall here, so it can fail sometimes, so we have to take error into consideration. First check, which will be an easy check, which will be if job equals to nil, will return sorry, it will be not with job, it will be j. If j equals to nil, return will return an empty map, so will return nil, and error empty job id, job nil, error job nil. Okay, next we will check for job id. If job dot id equals to empty string, will return nil, and error job empty job id, and then we will convert the payload we get into a JSON format, because the payload can be anything, the payload with the job can be anything. So first let me name this to j. Next let me create payload for error. So the payload is the data that the job comes with. So here we will use JSON.Marshall to convert the payload, which will be j.payload, and if it fails, then we will return an error. If we return nil comma fmt.error, because I want to tell where the job failed. So Marshall payload for job, I'll give the ID here, and the error we get, let me just pass the ID, j.id, and just error we get. Yep, this works fine. So the payload is now a byte array. Now we can do what is, we can return the map. Return the map of string ID and any key which will be starting from ID, which will be, for context I'll have to check ID, which will be string, and so I'll do ID, which will be j.id. Next field we need is type, which will be j.type. These don't need any conversion, so they work fine. Next thing we will need is not enough return values, return nil error, so that our compiler doesn't complain every time we write something. So next thing we need is a payload. Since Redis, I told you, is a string based system, so we'll do is string into, I'll convert the byte array into string. Next we'll need status, as I remember correctly, yeah, payload status, then priority. Payload status will be j.status, and j.status is a type of status, so I'll need to convert it into a string. J.status. Next our type is priority, which is a type of int. Again, we need to convert it into a string. So what we'll do is we'll use the internal function integer to ASCII, which comes from the package string conversion. So let me write it. Priority will be string con what was it, str con, yes, dot IPOA. So it will convert it into a 64-bit integer. C dot priority. Now coming to the next field, we will have delay, which is a type of time dot duration. So I need to convert the time dot duration into a string. So a small helper function is needed here too. So let me write about that helper function. Fun and food. What was the type? What was the type of? I need. What was the type? Time dot duration. So encode duration. Encode duration value. Encode duration value. Yeah, this works fine. What it will do is it will take a time dot duration value, a value which is time dot duration, and it will convert it into a string. I don't think this will cause any errors. Let me think about this. Time dot duration. We will pass time dot duration file to a string. What can go wrong? I don't think anything can go wrong here. Let me think about this one more time. Yeah, I don't think anything can go wrong. If anything goes wrong, I'll return an empty string. If value is 0 value, p dot is 0. What was the function? I remember it was is 0. Why it's calling if v is 0. If 0 is undefined type, time dot duration has no did I import time package? I imported time package. Then why is that issue? These are type of time dot duration, and I remember there's a is 0 on time dot duration. 0. Why is not working? Dot is 0. Let me return empty string, and if it is not 0, we'll return v dot format. Again, I don't get the functionality. Quick fix. What's the issue? Why is the compiler not getting the type, which is time dot duration, and time dot duration has a is 0 functionality, which is this one. Is 0 is undefined, missing time dot duration has no field or method is 0. Let's ask our AI what's the issue here. Solving the is 0 mystery. What can be the issue here? No, I don't need this. I know that. Let me check on Google. Time dot duration is 0. Go line. Okay, it doesn't have a 0 method. Instead, check it by comparing the value to 0. Okay, that's the issue. Okay. I fumbled. It doesn't have a is 0 formatting. That for the time dot time. Yep. So we don't need to check anything here. We'll just return what we'll return is we'll convert str dot what we will do is format int. We'll format it into an int of int 64 of v, which will be of type base 10. So what I'm doing is I'm just converting that time duration value into string with the base 10 integer, right? So let me just write about this. What was the type? I have to check again. It was delay. Okay, delay is a type of encode duration value, which will be j dot delay. And I think everything works fine here. Encode duration value j dot delay. Nice. Next value we have to check is max retry count, error. Let's write about them. They are simply one conversion away, so I'll do them fast. Max retry. How did I define them in the JSON? I'll use the same format, underscore retry. Okay. Max underscore retry is equals to str from I that will be j dot max retries, and same goes with our retry count. What did I define it at here? Let me check. It was retry underscore count. So I'll use that as a key, and again str from dot itoa j dot retry count I'll use. Next thing I need to do is check error. Error is simply a string, so I'll do error and return j dot error, and what are we left with are three fields which are of type time dot time. So now we need to convert time dot time value. So I'll write a function just like we did before. I'll use encode time value. Here is where we will check time dot time. Am I right? Yep, they are time dot time, and it will convert into a string. Oh shit, I fumbled up the formatting. Let me increase the size. I think this was the size, and it's 5. Okay, sorry for the fumble. So what I'll do here is I'll check the 0 value first, then I'll format the string. Yep, that's easy. If v dot is 0, here we have the is 0 function. I was confused between duration and time, so I'll return an empty string, and lastly I'll return v dot format, which will convert this into a string, and I'll need time dot r. I'll use RFC 3339 because it's familiar to ISO formatting, and a nano, which means this will give us a nanosecond. It will give us reference with the nanosecond precision like that. So this is our encode time value, and let's write the three remaining values as encode time value. What are the three remaining values? Let me just go through them once. Created at, updated at, and run up. Created underscore at created underscore at encode time value This will be j dot created at. Next update is at will be encode time value, again j dot update that, and lastly run after. How did I write run underscore after? I remember, yeah, run underscore after. So what I'll do is encode time value, which will be j dot run after. So this is our map already. What's this R? Everything looks good to me here. So let's get back to our save functionality. What I'll do first is I'll take these converted values. Alright, I'll take these converted values and store them in some fields. If I may say, let's write about them. Fields. I'm naming it fields because Redis uses fields for naming of hash. So job to Redis hash. I'll return a job here, and yeah. What's the issue? Declare and not used. Okay, J, undefined J. So it needs a job. Okay, done. Okay, what I'll do here is I will just go with the checking the error. If error, I'll return the error. Return the error because error is already defined here. Like it will tell us what failed. Only one error is there, so that will work fine. Okay. Next, I'll do what is I'll store this into our hash. So look at the syntax. Like I don't care about the return value. I only care about the error. Equals to store dot client dot hset, if I remember, hset, yeah, hset will take a context, a key. Oh, we never defined the key. Let me define the key. Let me define the key prefix first, like we defined yesterday. So working on here, I'll define a key after the interfaces. Should I define that before the interface? I should define that before the interface. First, what should I name it? Redis job key. Redis job key prefix will be equal to GoTaskQ and job. This will be a key prefix. Let's write a small helper function that converts the key prefix into a full key. I'm writing a helper function so that I don't have to write every second of the function. What should be the function? It should return me the Redis key. It should take ID and it should return me the Redis job key based on the job key prefix and the ID. So let me write the thing first. I'll check if there is a noise coming. No noise. Sorry. Let me just start again. So what I was doing is Redis job, something like that. It will give us a Redis job key by taking ID, which is string type, and give us a string, and that's all. What I'll do is fmt.sprintf. I'll printf like %s %s, which will be a Redis job key prefix first and then the ID we passed. And that's all we need. Alright, going on. Give me a sec. To like my hospital again. Yep, back at it. Now passing the Redis job key, which will take ID, job.id, and then we will do what we will do is we need hget. So hget, as I remember, takes key and fields. If I remember, let me check through Google. Yep, it takes fields. Okay, and we need the result. Based on this, if error not equals to nil, what I will do is return new error, which would be fmt.error. What should I write there? Return fmt.error. Save job, the job ID to Redis field with an error. So what will be the error? Let me pass these two values, job.id and our error, which is this. And I think I'm done with this function. I'll return nil. So coming here, I remember in the save function we had multiple checks. Let me add those two checks like here before going forward. Yep, yeah, this is looking good, and now I think it's ready. Next function we'll write is a get function, like we just wrote in our in-memory implementation, but we will write for Redis now. So where's the get function? I should copy the part till this part, because this will remain the same no matter what, and paste it here. Just convert this to Redis store, and it will give us a job and an error, and this, and this is what. Okay. Return nil, error, empty job ID, and now what we'll do is we'll get all the fields from the hash. So there are two functions in to get. One is hget field, which returns only single field, but hget all, which returns all the fields, and I think I can also filter the fields, but I need all the fields back. So what I'll do is values err equals to store dot client dot hget all. Okay, we will pass the context and the key, which will be again Redis job key, Redis job key with job ID, which was passed. And what's the issue? Assignment is two variable, but store the returns one value. So we need the result, because the result returns as a the value and an error if error occurs. So that's why we need result here. Next we'll check error, if error, return nil, and the error will be something like we did have an error, didn't we? So I have to write fmt dot sprintf error f. The error f will be kept job with the current ID that will be percent s from Redis field with the error code, which will pass like this, and w, and I'll pass the ID job dot ID, and secondly we'll pass the error. So this is all right. Next we need to get the values in our struct format. So what I'll do is I'll create a helper function again, and I think this will be my last helper function and last function I'll do today, because I have to study for my exam. It's computer networks and I have to study a lot. So let me write. Okay, where's my helper functions? Here's my helper function. So the above helper function did a job to Redis hash. Now we'll do Redis hash to job. Punch Redis hash to job. Just the opposite of the function we did earlier. It will take a string. It will take a string. No, it will take a string. String map. This will be the values which will pass a map of string and string. Yep, it will return something like this. And it will take these parameters and it will return as a job of type job and error if any occurs. What's the issue? Instead of naming this, let's name this like this. So compiler doesn't complain. First we will check if the data was corrupted. So we can check it by length of values equals to 0. So what our return is, return nil job. We have an error defined job not found, something like that. Next we'll convert different values to their initial value state. Like we converted priority from integer to string. Now we have to convert back to integer. So let me write these. That would not be good. I was thinking of writing a helper function for inside a helper function, but no. Let's be verbose. Priority comma error will be it will take strcon dot. I'll convert it into ASCII to integer, which will take a string which will be about the value of map with the key string values with the key priority. Priority spelling should not be taken in, while this can break the flow. Error, again we will return nil, and we will return fmp.errorf where it failed. Parse priority. Yes, that's the right spelling. And percentage leave and a string which will be our error or times the use. Okay, next thing I need to do is check max retry accounts and different values which are delay, which we encoded. Now we need to decode, created at, updated at, all those values, and then return a job struct. It's going to be a verbose task. Should I keep my eye on this one. I think this task should be at my AI. I'll write two helper functions, then I'll make the AI write the code. So the two helper functions I'll write are decoding the duration and decoding the time values, which we encoding. So encoded duration value. So I'll return the function decode duration value. Decode duration value. Yep. Duration value. It will give us a string and we will convert it into a time dot duration value. Time dot duration value and error if conversion gives us any error. Next we'll check if v equals to empty string, then we'll return 0 and a nil. Okay, so if v is empty, we can return 0. Next we'll do is parse. Parsed object will be like this. Parsed value will be like this. str dot parse. What was that? Parse int. We need to parse the int because, as you remember, we formatted int, so we'll need to parse the int and parse int based on our usage. Like I'm going to use RFC339 as I told you. So no, the duration will not be like this. That will be like the value we have passed, a base and a bit size. It will be 64 bits, so it will return as an int 64 type, and then we will just return that by typecasting it to time dot duration. First, let's check about error. If error, return error, and instead of nil, I return 0. And lastly, return time dot duration, which will type out the part and then nil error. And let's format this. This will decode the duration value, and I'll also need a function that will decode time value. Again, it will give us a string, and we have to convert it into a time dot time and error. So what I'll do first is I'll check for empty string. If v equals to empty string, I'll return time dot time empty interface. It means it will give us a 0 value for time, which will be 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 like that. Okay. And next we'll parse this. Again, parsed from error, which will be time dot parse. We'll parse it based on our decoding. We parsed it based on our encoded time, which was RFC339. So what would we use? Layout, which will be RFC3339, and it would be nano. Wait for a second, I have to attend a call. Anju, are you? सुन लिया यार. So now I'm back at it. Sorry for the delay. So what I'll do is I'll parse it based on the time RFC this format and this layout, and I'll pass the string, and it will give us if error. If it gives me an error, what I'll do is return again time.time with an empty struct, and lastly I'll return parsed. So now I can use my AI to write the verbose task. I'll priority giving. Let me make it on so that writing the verbose code becomes easier. Next, retries. So it will do strcon video. Pass next retries again. Retry count, nice. Delay, decode duration value. Yeah, it took it greatly. Created it, updated it, run after, and that's all I need from you, AI. Okay, so it converted the task max retries to integer, retry count to integer, delay to a duration value, created it to a time value, updated it to a time value, and run after to a time value. Now, next thing we'll do is we'll define a payload which will be JSON.row message type. So let me define a payload. It will be JSON.raw message. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll check the raw payload. If it's empty, I'll do something like see what I'm going to do. If raw payload, which is defined as this, which will be values of payload. If raw payload is empty, what I'll do is I'll payload equals to JSON.raw message, which will convert it to a this, and raw payload. Cannot use raw payload. Why can't you use raw payload? White value. Variable of string as a white value. So it will return string that is empty JSON.raw message. Raw message. What does raw message take? I needed JSON.raw message. Yeah. Oh, I don't need to use a struct. I want to type cast it into JSON.raw message. Yep. Now it's okay. Now, so it helps me get the payload even if it's nested. So next, I'll return my job struct, which will have ID as what will be values ID. Again, our post task. Let's complete this first with AI type payload status priority delay max retry error run after. What is missing? Not enough return values, so I'll do that nil. And I think everything looks good to me. What are the different values? ID, type, payload, status, priority, delay, max retry count, error, treated at, updated at, and run after. Everything is covered. So That's all right. Okay, next thing we'll do is um, complete the get function, and then I'll sign off. So we got the values. Now what we'll do with the values, we'll convert those values into our own job struct. So what I'll do is we'll have a job error equals to job Redis hash to job. This is a function. It will take values and it will return us an error if any. Init error. If error, I'll return the error as it is. And lastly, we'll return the job we got with a nil error. I think this works fine. And why is it showing unreachable code? Oh, why did I write this? I think the function looks good to me. Okay, now we have to think about update and update status and delete. The update status one will be a big one because it will need scripting, because I don't want unatomic operations. So for atomicity, I'll have to write a Lua script again. For the delete one, I can write it right now. It's a very small function. So let me write the delete functionality, and then I'll end the stream. So let me write func. What was the function signature? I'll just copy it from. There's the function signature part again. Yeah, here's the function signature, and I'll need this. I'll do this, and I'll do this, and delete. We'll take a Redis store and context ID string error, which will relate the context, and if ID is nil, then we will record this in next. The part for Redis error equals to Redis store dot client dot hdel. This is used for delete. Should I use hdel or del? That's a question. Del. Function context key. So I'll need del instead of hdel. Hdel will be used to remove hash values, but I need to remove the full hash. So I'll do I'll pass the context in the Redis job key ID, which is a hash ID. So the hash will be completely removed, and we'll get a result from it. And based on the result, if error is not equals to nil, we will do is return an error fmt.error f, which will be simply delete job %s failed, something like that, from Redis, because it is a Redis job. From Redis failed. So I'll pass the error, which is %w, and the ID will be ID, and the error will be our error. That's all. And lastly, this function will return nil because everything works fine. Okay. And I think everything looks good to me. Get, update, delete, memory implementation is not changed. We have written some helper functions. And lastly, tomorrow I'll write a Lua script and update functionality. After that, the store will be complete, and we'll move to worker pool, mainly to PubSub. We'll use Redis PubSub to fire fire some events, and based on that events, our server will respond. So let's close this for today. Okay, thanks. Also, one more thing I need to do is, I forgot yesterday. Since we have the default function now, default queue function, so we'll get the default queue from here instead of writing a default like that. And the main dot go, what's the thing we did? Registered, new registry, new worker pool. Where's the queue we created? Yeah, new memory queue. So we created a new memory queue, and according to our function, the first queue we created is already the default queue. So this will work fine. Okay, then I'll continue the work tomorrow.